On its surface, the path of destruction is pretty straightforward and simple to understand. Its Aeon Nanook believes that the universe is a big mistake and shouldn't exist in the first place, and so both the Aeon and its followers look to destroy, well, everything. But while the overarching theme of this particular path is simple to understand, how its followers show their devotion can take a myriad of different forms, and the path itself can encompass emotions and actions that are quite distinct. On top of that, there's a group that even Nanook feels is just too crazy despite them being followers of destruction. So in this video, we're going to explore the groups that follow the path of destruction and see how each of them represents destruction in Honkai Star Rail's universe. Before we dive into the carnage of destruction, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. The path of destruction manifests itself through destructive emotions and actions such as recklessness, wrathfulness, and anger. The biggest representation of this path is obviously the Aeon of Destruction, Nanook, whose primary goal is the complete destruction of the universe and every sentient living being that exists within it. Ironically, this also includes himself and the path that he follows, but that seems to be a key feature of destruction, having no discrimination over what is destroyed as long as everything is gone. While the followers of other paths tend to have their own interpretation of how they devote themselves to an Aeon and their path, the followers of the path of destruction are quite single-minded. The first faction we'll talk about is the infamous Antimatter Legion, literally the main antagonist of the story. The Antimatter Legion is a faction that is supposedly under the direct command of the Ruin Author himself. They act on behalf of the Will of Destruction and is said to be commanded by Nanook through his proxies, the Emanators of Destruction. Their name is also rather apt, as an antimatter is technically matter with an opposing charge that cancels out regular matter, so with their ideology, they seem to have picked quite a good name. The Antimatter Legion are more akin to an army rather than a group that is said to be formed from a collection of the most vicious and evil creations spread throughout the universe. Among their ranks are Void Rangers, Doomsday Beasts, and semi-sentient tools such as the Baryons and Anti-Baryons, and this shows how varied their membership actually is. On top of that, some of the enemies that we've seen so far, specifically the Void Rangers, look suspiciously like the Mara Struck we see in Xianzhou, which makes me wonder if they accept them as well, as long as they just want to destroy stuff. I also wonder whether the Antimatter Legion are changed in any way from their original forms, much like how the Mara Struck are created, but this hasn't really been touched on or hinted on at the moment. We don't really know the origins or story of their formation, but it seems that they have been serving Nanook for quite a long time. As I've mentioned, those that follow destruction do not discriminate among its targets, and this is clear when you observe how the Legion operates. Whether it's a small or large planet, an advanced civilization, or a primitive one, the Antimatter Legion doesn't care one way or the other. They exist only to completely destroy everything, and when they descend upon a planet, they would only leave when every spark of life has been extinguished, and only then will they move to the next target. Despite their rather straightforward approach, the leadership within the Legion seem to be quite different in their thinking. The Emanators of Destruction, or better known as Lord Ravagers, each have their own preferences in how they approach their goals. Fentilia, for example, prefers to create discord within civilizations, and prefers to create destruction through internal collapse, watching as her machinations causes internal strife and infighting until friends turn on each other, ultimately leading to destruction. This is what she was planning to do with the Xianzhou Luofu. She has also mentioned that other Lord Ravagers prefer the more direct approach by just destroying planets and civilizations outright. Within the list of archenemies text, the Lord Ravager known as Iron Tomb specifically targets advanced civilizations, while Zephyro prefers to orchestrate doomsday scenarios for his own targets. Now, regardless of their methods, all of them eventually will orchestrate the destruction of their target, but the different approaches rather than a direct one seems to indicate that those who lead the Legion are given autonomy on how to operate as long as it leads to destruction. One rather interesting thing about the Antimatter Legion is that they seem to appear wherever a Stellaron is present. Now, this is a highly debated topic within the community, as some have mentioned that this is because the Stellarons are created by Nanook, Whereas in universe, this is not explicitly mentioned, and even in the databank information on Stellarons, this connection is only speculated. We don't really know why the Legion acts this way, but my guess would be, regardless of who created the Stellaron, having such a destructive object present may make destroying the planet or civilizations far easier, though there have been times where the Legion were repelled by a Stellaron, such as on Bellabong. Because of this, it's kinda unclear whether the Stellarons are created by Nanook or they are just tools that the Antimatter Legion use whenever they can. So functionally, the Antimatter Legion is kind of the main faction when it comes to the path of destruction. But what about the people who are deemed to be too crazy and unwieldy to even join the Legion itself? People who claim to follow destruction but do so in such a self-serving manner, as well as being very difficult to control, that even Nanook looks down on them. Well, for such individuals, they would instead join the Annihilation Gang. According to the Genius Society member number 64, Dr. Primitive, the value Nanook sees in the Annihilation Gang may be less than the value an infant sees when they smash a vase or vase. Those that are in the Annihilation Gang claim to follow the path of destruction, but are too insane or self-serving to be systematically effective. They are without a doubt destructive in nature, but do so not because of the right reasons according to Nanook's will, but rather to serve and fulfill their own lust for carnage, or perhaps even in vengeance for their own petty squabbles. Those that follow the group wish to at some point be seen favorably by Nanook, though most of them are unaware of how much Nanook actually dislikes them. The Annihilation Gang are made up of random intergalactic murderers, marauders, pirates, and pillagers, all of whom claim to be acting in the will of destruction, but most likely just use it as an excuse. Despite Nanook's dislike of them though, he doesn't seem to act against them either and allows them to continue existing, likely because on some level, they are still acting in the best interest of the path of destruction and through their actions likely contribute to it. So based on these descriptions, the Antimatter Legion are likely the more orderly faction when it comes to carrying out the will of destruction, while the Annihilation Gang is likely the more chaotic and uncontrollable sibling. It's unclear at this point if there are any other factions that venerate the Aeon and the Path of Destruction, as their goal is the destruction of everything, and there aren't that many people who really want that. As the Antimatter Legion is the main antagonist group, it's very likely that we will continue to face them in the story moving forward and slowly move up the ladder to ultimately have a showdown with Nanook himself. Whether we will learn more about them moving forward after the Xianzhou storyline is completed is unclear, but it's very likely we will run into more of the Lord Ravagers. That's pretty much everything we can cover right now when it comes to the followers of destruction. Let me know in the comments if you think you would ever join either of these groups, and if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice non-destructive day ahead.